of course, your first line in the budget is you.
To be truthful, no.
Shouldn't it be?
Yes, it should be. Look, to be honest, it depends on the context of where I'm at the time. I've done some wonderful documentaries where, to be truthful, I didn't get anything really to pay myself, certainly for creative services. But I was artistically fulfilled. I worked with some fantastic musicians and I believed in the project. The next job that might come in might be a telemovie with terrible turnaround. You know, I might be going to bed at night. It might be very stressful. Well, I'll make sure that I don't spend a portion of the budget to compensate for that. So it depends on project to project, to be fair. Yes. And that's the truth. And I think you'll find that with a lot of people in the music side of the industry.
Tell us a little bit about how the different areas impact on your ability to run a successful business. What I mean is there's feature films, there's telemovies, there's drama TV series, there's documentaries, corporate videos, and other strange little novelty things that you've done.
Yes.
What is the most profitable? Do you know which is the most profitable, and how do you assess that?
I think, to be truthful, television is the most profitable because you have the commitment of 13 episodes and you can take the average, you can take the whole lot of the sum and average it out and spread it out over the 13 episodes. And so without a doubt your budget, you can be much more clever with your budget. And I think likewise the turnaround is so tight, you don't lose as much time in meetings and rewriting and all this paraphernalia that happens on a big budgeted feature film. So I do actually think television is a better paying path. And it's rewarding because so many people see your production too. You know, there's reruns. I've got shows screening every week at the moment, and it's lovely. You know, and I think if I had chosen a path, and it was interesting, I did have this conversation with Richard Franklin. He thought it was quite peculiar that I was happy to be doing television when I was doing so much feature work, and he felt that I was possibly belittling my work by working in television, and I had to explain to him that the truth is I was a working composer and I've got hours and hours and hours and hours of experience in archive because I didn't decide I was only going to be a feature film composer and waited for my one movie a year, you know, or one movie every 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you do anything actively to pursue sales, to put it in a business sense? Sales, you know, work, commissions.
Oh, well, I mean, absolutely. If I know that there's something out there that sounds really interesting and I feel that I would have a really good time and have a lot to bring to the production, absolutely. I'll send out my CV and I'll send out my CDs and hope that I've selected music from my archive that is representative of what they may be looking for or what I could offer. But that doesn't always work because sometimes you can read a script and you haven't written that score yet. So you have to kind of present yourself and tell them what you're after, what you would do, and it's not always what they're looking for. So,
so in that context, do you have anyone else? Do you have an agent?
I have an agent.
Yes.
I have an agent, Sadie Cressman at Cameron Creswell Agency, and I used to be represented by Rose Creswell, who knew a lot of the people in the industry, and that's been helpful for me because you know, they can set up a meeting for me and just break the ice, because it's not easy walking up to someone out of the blue and selling your talent, you know, trying to present yourself in as a attractive creative choice for their movie, particularly if it's a production that's been 3 years or 4 years in the making. You know, people are very, very anxious about their decisions, and it helps to have someone introduce you in the first place. Yeah.
What about relationships? I mean, you've built up a network of connections in the film and television industries.
Yes.
Do they generate business for you?
Well, I'm sure they do, because I've worked repeatedly with some people. I think the thing which I have found very enjoyable is that I do change genre. So I might work in an animated kids production, but the next thing I'm doing is a really ghoulish thriller, and so the versatility interests me, and so in that respect, you know, I do have networks of people that work in various different areas, so I think that is helpful. But again, for me, you know, it's when people hear your music and it's appropriate. You're lucky that at that time they're thinking about what their film score should sound like, and if they hear something that kind of works for them, then you're on your way. More than relationships, for me anyway. That's my experience.
So you portray yourself not as a specialist?
I'm a chameleon. Because, no, truly, I can write for the symphony and choir and all the mass thing, and I can write for ethnic instruments, but I can also do a lot of little stuff in my own studio that doesn't require all those resources, and I do jump genres, and I love jumping genres, you know. One of my favourite weeks I had was the day after I handed in, you know, my big massive jungle score for Anacondas for Sony Pictures, and the next day I started doing Tracy McBean for the ABC with Hammond organ and upright bass on the blues scale, doing a little jazz, and it was like from this massive thing to this little two-piece combo. It was great fun, and I like that. I think that there must be something in everything that I do that is uniquely Nerida, but you know, I certainly don't have a repetitive repertoire.
Do you find that setting your fees has become matter of fact? Do you have a set way of setting them?
Absolutely not. The way it is people say this is the music budget, and I go, oh, how can I accomplish this? Is there any more? That's how basically negotiations go for me. Yeah. Look, I'm a very Maybe I'm foolish, but I'm a very trusting person. I believe that if the producer says the music budget is $50,000, I will work out a way to produce that score for $50,000, and maybe further on I might get another $10,000 out of them if they realise that the production requires it. But usually music budgets are not realistic when they're set, and my experience has been, you know, where there are overages, like when they have to go back into the edit suite and recut the film and so on, and they're still paying their staff because the production is still fully booted with production teams, that the money just whittles away, and it has to come from somewhere, and usually comes from music. It does.
I suppose this is, I think I know the answer to this already, but can you tell us the difference between the fees that are applicable here in the Australian market and overseas?
Well, very simply, right now in the United States, I have a colleague doing a third of the amount of work that I'm doing for 5 times the figure. So, you know, a music budget for an episode of something here might be, you know, $4,000, and I'll be working night and day to meet my deadline. And in the United States, you know, they're looking at 20 grand for that, you know, and they're not spending anything. They're not paying musicians because their budgets are so depleted now. They're not getting 40,000 anymore. But yes, no, but there are also different expenses over there because of the unions. The unions are extremely strong in Hollywood, and so, you know, there are different rates of scale for what you pay musicians and where you can record and so on based on unions. So without a doubt, you know, those budgets are probably justified.
Would you say this was directly in proportion to the domestic size of the market?
Yes, I would. I'm fairly realistic about that. You know, we can do a fantastic... In fact, it's interesting because I think all of the lead cinematographers and, you know, it's representative by the success of Australians in Hollywood. We're all extremely innovative Australians because of the budget restraints. People work out ways to do something within limited resources. So when they go to the United States and they're given an American budget, it just takes a lot of pressure off, and you can do things without the stress, but you're also able to do your typical creative, innovative things. Whereas I think in some ways I'm sounding fairly critical of my colleagues, but they're not as quick on thinking on their feet on how a budget can really be worked.